Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for 11 seasons with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And we have a special guest today. Of course, it's Rick Sadowski, who writes for NHL.com and also Hockey Buzz, which I also write for. And Rick also has a connection to Tom Laidlaw because he covered him years ago when he worked in California and Tom was playing for the Kings. And I bet you might have a story or two, Rick, about covering Mr. Laidlaw. And would that be accurate?
I don't have any great stories, but I will say this, Tom, you look a little different than back in the day.
I know, yeah. I had hair back then, right?
Yeah, and I did watch Survivor. That's the only reason I watched, just for you. I would record it. And
Thank you.
I stupidly kicked you off.
I know. I would expect nothing less. You better be watching me.
Of course I did.
Yeah.
It was the only reason. I don't watch those kind of shows otherwise.
You know, it's funny when I see guys like yourself think back about the LA days. There's a great time, right? When Wayne got traded there, and the difference of the team and the building and everything. That was I had a great time in LA. It was good.
Yeah,
made a huge difference. That's for sure.
Yeah. Rick, it's Tom's contention that he's in better shape now than he was at the end of his career. I think he's thinking a comeback at this point.
Well, judging by what I saw on Survivor, I have no doubt he's in better shape. I don't know about now, but it was during the show.
We drink a lot less beer than we did back in those days.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Different culture back then. It was funny because we had, Wayne Gretzky, obviously, and Larry Robinson, those kind of guys. And like both those guys, like Larry Robinson in particular, I don't know how you saw him, Rick, but when I was really impressed with him, he just loved playing the game. Even at the end of his career like that, he was just like a little kid. And that included sitting around having a few beers with the boys too, but he worked hard too. He was a great guy to play with. And
like you, he was great to deal with.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he was fun.
I think that's a compliment, I guess.
Did you say unlike me? Is that what you said?
No, I said like you.
Oh, okay. I tell a story all the time about one of my great experiences in the old Montreal Forum, and Larry was playing for the Canadians. And I was assistant captain, and he was either captain or assistant in Montreal. And one of those plays where you go to center ice, referee made a call, and you kind of argue with the referee. And so it's Larry and I stand there at center ice of the Montreal Forum. And all of a sudden, I hear this kind of like chirping, like at me. He wasn't talking to the referee anymore. He was talking to me. And I'm thinking, is Larry Robinson talking to me? And I looked over at him, and he's got a big grin on his face. And he goes, "What do you want, old man?" And I'm thinking, like, I'm in like my fourth year in the league, and he's like in his 15th. And I'm looking at him, and the referee's dying laughing. I can't remember who it was. And I said, "Who are you? Are you calling me old man?" And he was just like a little kid. That's really the first interaction I had with him. I really didn't know him that well. But, the fact that I was standing at center ice at the Montreal Forum, and Larry Robinson, one of the greatest defensemen of all time, was trying to give it to me. It was pretty funny. It was good.
Rick, I've told this story before, but I was on the road, and ESPN was running this was several years ago, classic games, and it was a milestone game for Wayne Gretzky playing for the Kings. And I'm watching, and the first power play unit rolls out with Gretzky, and the second power play unit rolled out. And of course, Wayne Gretzky played on both the first and the second power play units. And here comes Tom Laidlaw. How would you explain to our viewers how Tom Laidlaw, who, Herb Brooks once said, if Tom ends up with the puck, a mistake has been made. How did he end up on the second power play unit of the LA Kings in the Wayne Gretzky era?
Yeah.
You're asking me or Tom?
I'm asking you.
I want to hear you.
I've heard Tom's explanation, and I'm really not buying it. I'm hoping to get an unbiased viewpoint.
Honestly, that was so long ago. I can't even conceive of him being on the power play. all due respect, I don't remember.
Well, that was my thinking as well when I was watching it. But anyway, well, let's talk a little bit of that. The reason we had you on is obviously the Colorado Avalanche and the Tampa Bay Lightning are both considered almost co-favorites to win the Stanley Cup, and their start was 1-1 against the Blues, but they had a very impressive 8-0 win against a pretty good Blues team. What's your take on where the Avalanche really are at, and do you share the thoughts that they're one of the top two contenders to win the Cup?
Well, they're certainly in the top 3 or 4 at any rate, but it's kind of amazing. 4 years ago, they had 48 points. So they've come a long way. But I mean, this is the deepest team that they've had since the glory days, if you want to call it that, when they were, they had all these Hall of Famers on the team. They're really deep up front. This is the deepest defense maybe they've had even, well, I can't say previously when they had Ray Bork and Rob Blake and Adam Foote and all those guys, but their defense is really deep. I mean, people are saying, oh, do they have the goaltending with Grubauer and Francouz? I think their goaltending's good enough. They're going to score a lot of goals. They don't really give up a whole lot of goals either, despite the fact that they play kind of an offense-minded, really fast-paced type game with a lot of speed. I think the goalies are good enough. They played pretty well last year until they both got hurt. I mean, what are the chances of your number 1 and 2 goalies getting hurt in the playoffs, in the same series? They could have gone farther even last year. So, yeah, there's no question in my mind that they're definitely a contender, and that's the way that they're looking at it. When we asked Joe Sakic just before the season started, is it Stanley Cup or bust? And that's the way it used to be. And he didn't say yes, but he said that's the way the players feel. So I think absolutely they have a good shot at winning the Cup. This is the best chance that they've had since back in the day.
You see these young kids coming in the league now, and like a guy like a Capo Caco here at the Rangers, didn't have a great rookie year, and I think people start thinking, well, geez, is he any good or not, right? I think people kind of look at Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews, and those guys come in at 18-year-old and really play well. You look at Nathan McKinnon; he's one of those guys that really didn't play well for the first 2 or 3 years, right? But now look at him now; he's arguably the best player in the National Hockey League. Did you think he was a bust, or did you really think in those early years that he was just that young kid that needed to grow up a little bit?
I was starting to wonder a little bit, but the funny thing is, he was too. I did a big story on him last year. And I think it was the 48-point season when he was kind of depressed, isn't the right word, but frustrated with how the team was playing, frustrated with his own play. It wasn't all his fault. It was just a bad team. And he was just starting to wonder, am I good enough to reach the standards that I did in junior hockey? And he went and, he's really close friends with Sidney Crosby. And, of course, they're both from Nova Scotia, so they talk a lot and they train a lot in the off season. And I know that he spoke with him, and he worked out harder than ever. And this would have been, I think, the year before he wound up being a finalist for the Hart. Personally, I think he should have won the Hart. I mean, they went from 48 points to 90 something or other, and they just carried him on his shoulders. And ever since then, he's just taken off. And whether he or McDavid is the best player in the world, it's debatable, but he's definitely the player that everyone thought he was going to be when they made him the first pick.
Rick, Cale Makar, when he joined the Avalanche, I remember being on the radio and I saying after watching him play a couple of games, it almost was like he was born to play with this group. He just fits so well, and his transition game, I think, is perfect to get it up to that group of forwards they have. Can you just talk about maybe the maturation that he's undergone since showing up with the team?
Well, it's funny because he wound up being their first round pick after the 48-point season, and they figured, well, we're going to get the first pick, and they went up losing the lottery. So he was the 4th pick, and he was playing with a lower tier team in junior. And he was committed to go to UMass because apparently no one was willing to give him a shot like for any other D1 schools. And after he scored all these points in junior hockey, and he's the number 4 pick in the draft, and it just shows you how tells you a lot about his maturity, even at that age, and his integrity. He could have easily said, us, the heck with UMass, I'm going to go someplace else, but he didn't, because that was the school that wanted him when really nobody else did. And he winds up going there and has a really good freshman year. Then, of course, he wins the Hobie Baker as a sophomore. But even at that age, at least it says a lot to me about how mature this kid is. And he never likes to talk about himself. It's always about the team. It's always about how everybody else, and he just wants to fit in. And as you said, he's a great skater. He's getting a lot better defensively. Maybe Tom could address that a little bit more. You know more about that kind of stuff than I do. But he fits in perfectly because they want to play a high-speed game, get the puck out of their own end quickly, first pass to forwards like McKinnon and Rantanen and Landeskog and those guys, and he fits in just right. And, of course, he went right from college right into the playoffs. First shot scores a goal, and the rest is just taken off.
Yeah, he's something else. He is. You mentioned Joe Sakic before. For people that don't know, I think most people do. He had a fantastic career with Quebec and Colorado, and now the general manager of the Colorado Avalanche. But you think back to the whole Matt Duchene situation when he's trying to get him traded. A lot of people are kind of questioning, does Joe really know what he's doing there, right? And then ever since that trade, what he got in that trade, and then since the team that he's built, he now looks like he's the smartest guy in the room. So did you really, when he was going through the Matt Duchene thing, did you question his ability to get it done?
We were all kind of wondering because it took so long. I mean, Matt Duchene, who I really liked as a player and a person, and was kind of fun to deal with, and not just talking hockey all the time. But anyway, he was frustrated, I guess. The team wasn't winning. He wants to win. I understand that. So he wanted out. And it was taken forever for the deal to come through. And then finally, the trade is made. It's a three-way deal with Nashville and Ottawa. They got so many players and draft picks out of that. I don't even remember all of them.
Yeah.
But Samuel Girard from Nashville. They got a first-round pick. Turned out to be Bo Byram, who's definitely going to be playing at some point this season. He just practiced for the first time yesterday with the team. And they got Shane Bowers, who was a later first-round pick with Ottawa, who's been on the taxi squad this year and played well in college. So they got a bunch of pieces. They actually got if you remember the Hamburglar, they got the goalie out of there, and he wound up playing a playoff game 2 years ago when everybody else got hurt and played really well. And at any rate, all of a sudden, Joe Sakic almost seems like he's the gold standard for GMs after people were wondering if he knew what the heck he was doing.
I agree totally, yeah.
Funny how things turn out.
Rick, the hockey world recently lost Pierre Lacroix, who was the GM, and I guess we can call him the architect of those great Colorado teams. Can you give me some of your memories of Pierre's management style and being in charge of that great team?
Well, back in the day, he would make trades. It seemed like pretty much out of nowhere. The only trade that anyone kind of suspected might happen would be Patrick Roy. After Patrick decided he didn't want to be in Montreal anymore. But just out of the blue, he would come up with these, marquee trades, very secretive. I don't think anybody knew what was going on in terms of the trades. I'm not sure what his reputation was around the league in terms of his personality. He was just a really good guy, a family guy. I remember when they won their first Stanley Cup and they invited the media after the parade. This might have been a couple days later. And they invited the media and their families and our two daughters, who at the time were barely toddlers at any rate, because we just moved here from California. And we're taking pictures with the Stanley Cup, and Pierre looks at our youngest daughter, who is like 26 now, but at the time she was barely a year and a half. And she goes, "Why don't you stick her in the cup, and that'll be a great picture." And I wish I didn't do it in retrospect. I wish I had. I figured, oh my God, all I have to do is stick her in there and the thing's going to knock over. I'm going to break it in half and it's going to be a disaster.
There's been worse things that happen to the trophy than that, though.
So I could have just imagine if something like that had happened. But I mean, that's just the kind of person he was. He could be a little hard nosed if he didn't like stuff that you wrote, but like what general manager or coach isn't, I guess. But he enjoyed, talking to you about family stuff. He liked seeing your kids and that kind of thing. It's the kind of stuff people don't really know about. So it really came as a huge shock when he passed last month.
You mentioned Patrick Roy. I almost forgot. Is it just was it a control issue there where Patrick Roy was coaching and then left all of a sudden?
I think he and Joe had some kind of disagreement about how they wanted the team to run. That's another funny thing about Sakic. So Patrick decides to resign, totally unexpected. This is like a month before training camp. So Joe Sakic's got to scramble to find a coach, and he wound up interviewing a few people, and he winds up with Jared Bednar. And people are saying, who the hell is Jared Bednar?
Yeah.
Very successful in the minors and the ECHL and also in the AHL. He won championships in both leagues. He won championships, I guess, in the ECHL as a very hard-nosed defenseman. And then his first season, it wasn't his fault, 48 points. Okay, what the heck? Now you look at it, and a lot of people are saying that he's going to be a finalist for, Coach of the Year, and he probably would have won it a couple of years ago, except for Vegas.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Rick. After the playoffs last year, I think within a couple or 3 days, I saw Joe Sakic quoted as saying that he thought his goaltending was good enough, and he has repeated that. But you talked earlier about how the players probably believe it's the Stanley Cup or bust. Do you think that Joe Sakic is the kind of general manager, if he doesn't think the goaltending has been good enough, and say in the first 15, 20 games, will he aggressively go out to try to get another goalie, or do you think he's just going to stand pat with these guys all the way through?
I think he'll wait longer than 15 or 20 games, but Grubauer threw a shutout on Friday. Yeah, they scored 8 goals and they had the puck almost the whole game, but even so, yeah, I think when he comes out, he's very honest, and when he believes in these 2 goalies, I think he really does. Now, obviously, they're only going to have a few more. Well, they have several years because it's a pretty young team to win a cup. But there's no question that if he doesn't believe these are the goalies that are going to take him to the level that he believes this team can go, yeah, he will. I don't know who's going to be available.
Yeah.
But there's no question. He's going to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's one thing to say you want to get another goaltender, but who else is out there that's better or that's available, right? I guess, I don't know what happens to Marc-Andre Fleury in Vegas, but I can't see Vegas trading him to Colorado to help them all in the same division, right?
Or vice versa.
Yeah, yes.
You want to make a deal with a goalie with a team that's one of the top teams in your division.
Yeah. Well, Rick, we are running out of time, but we appreciate having you on our podcast. And as the season moves on, I think Colorado is a team we're going to be talking about a lot. So we hope to have you on again.
Sounds good. It's great to see you guys. Hadn't seen you in a long time.
Great to see you again, Rick. Brings back new memories.
Yep. Thanks again. Thanks again.
All right.
Rick.
Take care.
Yep. That was Rick Sadowski of NHL.com, Tom, and also Hockey Buzz. And, some interesting, thoughts for him. And I'd really like you to speak to this as a former player, but Joe Sakic wouldn't call it Stanley Cup or bust. But the impression was that Rick got, and Rick's been around a long time, is that the players feel that nothing short of the Stanley Cup is it has to be the objective.
Well, that's the great thing that I like is like you could tell to me he has built not just a bunch of talented players on that team, but a real culture there too, right? That the players are thinking that way. We should be winning this year, right? Like sometimes with players, they're thinking, geez, I just, especially when young players, right? I just need to keep my job. I need to get better and better. But when you get the group of players that are thinking at that age, again, young team too, they're thinking that this is a chance for them to win this year. That's pretty impressive stuff, right? And it makes it easier for the coach, I think, too, because yeah, you're still going to have some off nights. This year is even, you don't want to have any off nights really with 56 games only played. But it just makes it easier as a coach to get the guys ready because they're really getting themselves ready, right? They're thinking, okay, we should be winning the Stanley Cup. The only issue is, though, do you look too far ahead? Like there's a lot of steps to get you to the point where you win the Stanley Cup. First of all, you've got to get there in the regular season. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to be first in your division or first in the NHL in points, but you got to get yourself into the playoffs. And then it's 4 rounds and it's, potentially 7 games every round. So it's not like you can just say, okay, we should win the cup this year and all of a sudden show up for game 7 or whatever of the Stanley Cup finals and you won it. There's a lot of work to be done.
Well, yeah, I mean, this shortened season, I'm not sure the fan base has really gotten their arms around what this means, but when you've played 5 games, you almost played 10% of your season,
right.
And when you've played 11 games, you've played 20%.
That's right.
Well,
you're good at math. Yeah, you're excellent at math.
Well, I'm just trying to bring home the idea that you start out 3-8, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
you really are, and that's why when I'm watching very closely. Before we went on the air, Tom was reading, that the Minnesota Wild is off to 2-0 start, and I looked and Buffalo, a team that I think had hoped to get off to a good start. They've lost their first 2 games, and I saw Penguin players quoted yesterday as saying, they felt some urgency to beat Washington after losing their first couple of games, and that was a good hockey game. I enjoyed that game, and those are 2 still pretty good teams, led by 2 Hall of Famers, and Crosby in Pittsburgh and Ovechkin in Washington, and both of them scored in that game, which you would expect when those 2 are facing off against each other. And even though Crosby's the center and Ovechkin's a wing, they still keep track of each other, and I still think they see that as a rivalry.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. And we were watching the game, and Brian Boucher, who's an old client of mine, a friend of yours as well, was commenting on the show on the game that it was they're kind of laughing about it, but they're saying, listen, this is a must-win for Pittsburgh. Yes, it's only the 3rd game of the season, but they go down 0-3, they're in serious trouble, and they didn't look good either. Pittsburgh. That's the thing that bothered me. Malkin really didn't do much until late in the game. I didn't think they looked like a confident team. I think actually Washington kind of let him off the hook a little bit and could have really buried him, I thought. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. Again, and what happens, right? Those teams like Pittsburgh with some older players, if they start to fall out of it too early, does the general manager say, okay, we got to break this up? I need to get rid of some of the pieces. But then it's tougher too, right? Because of the salary cap being flat. How do you trade some of those bigger contracts? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens during the season as teams, quicker than usual, fall out of the playoff race.
Well, I noticed between periods on NHL Network, Bruce Boudreau picked up on your confidence thing with the Penguins as well, or maybe it was after the game. I can't remember, but anyway, he was just talking about how he thought that the Penguins looked a little more confident as that game wore on. They didn't look good early on, to him. And as a coach, I would expect he would be on top of that. But, you brought up Brian Boucher, and used to be his agent. And, like he is the hot property in the broadcasting world now. You have this real handsome guy, but, he's entertaining, but he's also quite knowledgeable of what's going on. And my question to you is when you were his agent, did you foresee this, that he was going to have a post career perhaps in broadcasting?
He always had a great personality. I didn't know what he wanted to do when he was done playing, but it's interesting. He asked the question when he was done playing and he started to get into the broadcasting. I remember him and I had a conversation, and sometimes he was, he was thinking, okay, I'm going to do broadcasting maybe just in the Philadelphia area. And I remember saying to him, Bush, you don't understand the personality you've got. You shouldn't be just looking at just hockey or just the Philadelphia market. Like, you can be one of the best at it, because he does this. And you don't always see all of his personality. I think when we had Doc Emmerich on, we got talking about the fun he has too. And like, he's one of the great at impersonating people. He does a Dominic Hasek impression that is just spot on. And I know we told the story when Doc was on, but the time he called me, we talked about Tim Panaccio, right? You know Tim Panaccio well, wrote in Philadelphia there. And we were in the middle of a contract negotiation for Bush. And Tim Panaccio, Bush called me up pretending to be Tim Panaccio. And I bought it totally. I totally thought I was talking to Tim Panaccio. So I kind of went into agent mode, asking questions, went on for about 10 minutes, asking questions about the contract negotiation. I'm trying to be careful what I'm saying and everything. I had no clue it was Brian Boucher. And finally, Bush caught on to the fact that I didn't know it was him. He said, Tommy, it's me. And I didn't believe him. I still didn't believe that it was Bruce. I had to make him hang up and call him back again to make sure I wasn't talking to Tim Panaccio. He was fantastic. So you don't see all of the personality that he's got, but he speaks so well too. Yeah. So I don't know if I totally, to answer your question, totally saw that he was going to be doing what he's doing now and doing it as well, but I definitely knew he had a great personality.
Well, I met him, I think for the first time, or at least got to know him at the World Under-18 Championships in Mexico City.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I went out there. In fact, you were working for IMG then, I think.
Right.
And Mike Barnett was there. I remember Mike tried to get me to go out for sushi in Mexico City. And I said, are you kidding? We're afraid to drink the water. I'm not going to eat sushi here in Mexico City. But Boucher, it was so much fun. I mean, he was 17 years old, but he was entertaining, and he's very comfortable speaking. I don't want to say to the media because I was it. I was the only person there. But I don't even remember who was coaching that team. I should.
Geez, remember that in Mexico City, man? I remember that happening.
Yeah, there were like 10 people in the stands. I mean, that's probably the exact count. And there were more parents there because the parents, man. I remember one of the funniest things ever, and it was Danny Lacouture. Dad was there. I think he was a PE teacher. And Brendan Buckley's dad was there. Both those players played on that team, and the two of them were sitting maybe 5 rows from the ice. And at one point, Mr. Lacouture stands up and says, "Hey, you guys, you got too many men on the ice. Come on, guys." Well, the referee didn't have any idea that they had too many men on the ice. US did. So he looks around and starts counting them and calls a penalty. So, afterward, everybody was joking around with him that he had called Mr. Lacouture had called a penalty on USA because I don't think the ref had seen it.
I don't think you ever told me that story. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. It's the first time I've ever seen a fan influence the officiating. Yeah. So
there's a great question by one of our loyal followers here. So many 3-point games already. Time to change the point system for. I don't know. You know what? I don't have a position on that one. I hear people say that all the time, or not all the time, a lot. But I'm more like, I just think it's everybody's playing with the same rule on that one. I don't really know if it changes that much. But.
Well, it does. They've done studies to show that if you did it that way, I mean, really, it just brings it rewards teams that can win in regulation because you get that 3-point game, 3 points, and it actually makes more sense. I mean, why are some games worth 2 points and some worth 3? Like that makes no sense whatsoever. So, so if you made it, every game was 3 points, you win a regulation, you get 3. And that's what they use in soccer often, especially in tournament play. You see that a lot. So it's not something that, that's foreign.
Do you think it really changes? I mean, I guess, how does it change?
It changes the standings for sure.
Really, it does. Okay. Yeah. All right. If you're getting 3 points for a win.
Yeah.
But do you think teams now are getting penalized in some way because they're not playing as many overtime games? right?
Well, I think when you're one thing we've noticed is teams now will want to make sure they get the point, so
Right.
they kind of go into a shell and they're hanging on trying to get the point, and then they push,
Right.
To get in. Although I would say, this year with
Yeah.
divisional play,
Yeah, that's
where
different.
every game is a 4-point game,
Yeah.
essentially, because in the regular 82 game schedule, oftentimes there's division games going on, and there's always somebody winning or losing in your division. But this year, it's always happening.
Yeah.
So
if I'm a coach now in this divisional play, I'm wanting to make sure that we don't give that extra point to a team, right? Like, go after the win during regulation.
that was
Right.
the point I was going to make. Yeah, I think it's a little bit different this year. But normally, Susan Brooks is right. It would change the game, and it would reward teams. I think that the better teams who can win in regulation. And there would be a lot of emphasis to trying to win it all right there in regulation. Just to push it.
So to your point and Susan's point too. If you go to a regular 82 game schedule where you're not just playing in your own division, when you now have 3-point games, it'd be the same effect that you got as this year. That's all divisional play, right? You want to get that win to get your 3 points.
Yeah. You'd always want. I mean, it's just so preferable.
Right.
And,
Okay. I see now.
I mean, just think about it. If you're a coach now and you win 5 games in a row, and you win them all in regulation, and you've got 15 points out of that, as opposed to you won 5 in a row, but 3 of them were in overtime.
Right.
Right. Now all of a sudden you're going, well, I got 6, and then you end up with 9 points. It's a really big difference.
Okay, I have a little bit of a bone to pick. It's a football issue, but it can also be tied to hockey. So Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback for Kansas City. He got a concussion in yesterday's game. Obviously left the game, did not come back. They ended up winning anyways. The other quarterback did a great job through 1 interception. But all the talk is now, okay, he'll probably play next weekend. Now, I have a real problem with that because you look at the long-term effects of concussions, and it may not be affecting him until he's 40, 50, 60 years old. But these are these situations where they're just saying, okay, well, he's okay to play this next game. Well, man, he's a quarterback of a NFL football team in a big-time playoff game. The other team's going to be coming after him. Buffalo Bills play a hard brand of football. And I know it's a big game and everything, but this is the case where somebody has to step in on behalf of Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, and say, no, you're not playing this game. This is they've shown it. Well, they don't exactly know everything, but part of the issue with the concussions is coming back too quickly from a concussion, and you're not fully healed. So, man, listen, I would guess he's going to play. They're going to say, well, he's fine with the concussion, but man,
they have already sort of paved the road for that. Like after the game, Andy Reid said, I talked to him after the game. He seemed fine. I think we're going to be okay. They were already starting to lay it out, but I agree with you. I mean, this is a very difficult issue for the Players Association.
Yep.
Because who is going to push harder than anyone for Patrick Mahomes to play? It's Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And so, if they say the union wants to take a hard stand on this, their own players are going to say, look, it's my body. I can do what I want. It's just a tough issue, but I agree with you. Sometimes you got to tell an athlete, for your own good. Yeah. And just think about the visual that we had as he tried to get up after getting hit.
Totally. Listen, I hate that this is going to sound, I hope I say this the right way, but we lost Junior Seau to suicide, correct? And he had concussion issues. I mean, you can go on and on with players that we've lost their lives, or guys that are walking around now with, severe brain damage and everything from getting too many concussions. Those are the ones they should be calling on those guys to say, listen, we need you to come and talk to Patrick Mahomes. He needs to see, whatever he is, a 24 or 25-year-old, there's just no possible way he could understand what it's going to be like when you're 50 or 60 or 70 years old and have multiple concussions, right? You need to get those guys. Now, having said that, the reality is, and if I put myself in his shoes, even if that guy did come to me, I'd probably still play anyways.
Yeah.
That's the mentality that they have as athletes, that, okay, it may have happened to somebody else, but it's not going to happen to me. So you're probably right. There's nothing that you can do to stop him from playing. But that's the part for me is like, I just hope that nothing ever happens to him down the road because of the decisions they're making right now. That's all.
Well, at least in the NHL, and the same is true in the NFL, but it seems like everybody gets a little lax. Is with COVID-19, we now have a protocol. That everything has to be followed, but that's timely. It's happening now, but we have to be like that with COVID-19. We have to be
concussion.
Concussion. We have to be strong and make sure that. We're protecting the players themselves. You have to, sometimes you got to protect the players from themselves.
Yeah, totally. But see, like the heat of the battle, right? You're trying to get the points. The player wants to play. They're not thinking, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, right? It's just it's not part of it.
No, it's hard. Well, we're running out of time. Any final words of wisdom, Mr. Laidlaw?
Oh, it's a great weekend though. Lots of football, lots of hockey. Lots of fun. Looking for these playoff games. And the other thing is too, if it's, I'm a big Drew Brees fan. I'm not a New Orleans Saints fan necessarily, but I really admire him, the way he carries himself. And a lot of people think maybe that was his last game he's played. So if that's the case, he had a fantastic career.
Yeah. What do you think? Will we see Pierre-Luc Dubois traded, or are they going to wait on this? And if so, what do you think he'll end up?
Well, I think it depends on a few things. How is Columbus doing in the standings? How are they doing? If they're looking like they're going to make the playoffs, it's going to be tougher to get something done. And of the teams that he wants to go to, or they could make a trade with, and I think you said it very well recently that the Rangers could be. If Columbus is going to do well, they've got to make a trade with somebody like the Rangers that has.
Or Montreal's another one that I think is right up there as well.
Yeah, totally. So that depends on how are those teams doing in the standings, and what are those assets that the Montreal or the Rangers are willing to trade are really contributing to the Rangers lineup. And I'll tell you, if the Rangers are doing well and they can make a trade for Dubois and give up, maybe you still have to give up some good pieces, but nothing that really hurts the hockey team too much, and they can be a real scary team.
Yeah, no. Did you think the Rangers? How would you rate their performances? 2 games, one not so good, one okay.
Yeah. I look at it. We got a young lineup, right? Even the guys like Capo Caco and Hedel, they're in their second or third years, or whatever. They're still young guys. I think there's like 7 or 8 guys that are under 22 years old. So to me, I'm not concerned that they had an off night. It's the first night. I know there was no people in the Madison Square Garden, but still, it was their first National Hockey League game. They did not have a preseason game, so I wasn't overly concerned about it. But it was important that they came out second night and had a great game, and they did that. Even Georgiev was great in the second game. Shesterkin in the first game, he had a tough first 10 minutes of the game, but the rest of the game he really battled hard. So I like, but it's going to be tough, man. Like I said, even Pittsburgh's been struggling. They're not an easy team to beat, so it'll be a tough division.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone joining us. If you want more hockey action, I'm on the Hockey Debates podcast at 4:00 on Tuesdays at hockeydebates.com. I also appear on the Hockey Buzzcast on Fridays at 1:00 at hockeybuzz.com.
And you can listen to our audio version of this show and all the other shows on 365 Sports on radio.co. So a lot of stuff going on. All right, guys, we'll see you on Wednesday.